If someone asked you, "What is Harry Potter about?" how would you answer? Well, it's about an unfortunate orphan who finds out he's a wizard and goes off to a magical school and so on and so on. Now that's one way to answer that question, and that's a good description of what happens. But a story is more than just what happens in it. A good story goes deeper. It tells you something about yourself, something about the world, the real world. We can learn valuable lessons watching characters navigate challenges and overcome them. Like the tortoise and the hare, every story has a moral. So what is Harry Potter's? I'm going to make the case to you that the entire seven-novel saga is about finding the answer to life's most pressing question: what to do about the problem of death. It's a question that none of us can escape, which is why the story grips us so, even when we're young. Because once you realize you're going to die, you need to decide how you're going to live. Do we cling to life at all costs? Do we withdraw from the fight and protect ourselves? Is there another way? A better way? By the end of the Deathly Hallows, Harry finds the answer to that question. And by the end of this video, I'll tell you what that answer is according to this story. And in doing so, I'll tell you what at the most fundamental level Harry Potter is about. So, death. It's a problem. It's a problem that's riddled all over the Harry Potter story. There are plenty of actual deaths, of course, but that's not the only way that death presents itself. Death is also a looming specter. It alters the material world. It's an actual place you can access through your mind and through the physical world. Death is even a character in a fairy tale that turns out to be much more than just a fairy tale. You don't need to be a literary scholar to see that death is a strong motif in Harry Potter. But what do we do about it? One useful way to understand most stories is to watch for two things: the motivation of the hero and the motivation of the villain. Those two motivations will be two opposing views about the theme, and a good story will use the plot to pit those competing motivations against each other. In this video, we're going to look at what motivates our hero, Harry, and our villain, Voldemort, at the most fundamental levels. Then we're going to pick out a few critical moments along the plot that bring those two characters and their motivations into conflict, and how that conflict is resolved in the end. And by doing all that, we'll find out, like Harry does, what the answer to our central question is. When we first meet Harry Potter in his cupboard under the stairs, what is his deepest motivation? You might say that at this point it's mostly just to survive the abuse of the Dursleys each day, but why is he stuffed in the Dursleys' broom cupboard in the first place? He's not just a 10-year-old kid, he's a 10-year-old orphan, which means that his life was damaged early by death. The deaths of his parents, so deeply that it left a scar. Then as he enters Hogwarts, he's wrapped up in navigating classes, friendships, Quidditch, the mysteries of the castle, but percolating just beneath the surface is a hard longing for his parents. That longing bubbles over when Harry finds the mirror of Erised, which reflects his motivation back to him. We see that his deepest, most desperate desire is to reverse death. He wants his parents back. And Harry's first lesson from Dumbledore is that no spell can bring back the dead, and that it does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live. So, wasting away in front of a magic mirror is not what to do about the problem of death, according to Dumbledore. He said to live on, and so that's what Harry does. And during his adventures, Harry does everything in his power to try to prevent death from taking anyone else. He saves Hermione from a troll, Ginny in the next book, he saves Sirius's life, and Peter Pettigrew's even after he's found out that he's the one who betrayed his parents. He tried to save people who didn't even need saving during the Triwizard Tournament. All this at the risk of his own life. His instinct to preserve life was so well known that Voldemort was able to use it against him to tragically cause Sirius's death in the Order of the Phoenix. The closest thing that he had left to his parent. And that raises another question. What about the ones we can't save? Is it all futile in the end? There's a scene in the books that was left out of the movies. After Sirius was killed, Harry sought out a strange character, nearly headless Nick. Harry, desperate for any way out of his grief, convinced himself for a moment that Sirius would come back as a ghost. Harry is still desperately trying to reverse death. Surely Sirius would be too and do whatever was necessary to stay with Harry, except Nick immediately shuts him down. The reason being that the only ones who would choose the cheap, ghostly imitation of life are those who are afraid of death, and that wasn't Sirius. Sirius will have gone on. But why not fear death, if it causes so much pain and devastation? After his conversation with Sir Nicholas, Harry is left just as disappointed and confused as when he heard from Dumbledore way back in his first year. When Harry asked how Nicholas Flamel could agree to destroy the Sorcerer's Stone and allow himself to die after 665 years of life, Dumbledore responded that, to the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. Harry is dead set against death. He wants to stop death wherever he can. That's his entire motivation. But he's learning that no one, not even Nicholas Flamel, can stop death forever. Harry still doesn't know what to do about the problem of death. On the flip side, we have Voldemort. The villain of this story is not even a physical being at the start. He's just a presence and a threat. Harry learns about Voldemort very early on from Hagrid. He learns that Voldemort killed his parents, but he doesn't learn why. He learns that in trying to kill Harry, his body was destroyed, but he doesn't learn how. He learns something else about Voldemort. Hagrid says a very curious line. He says that Voldemort doesn't have enough human left in him to die. Hagrid probably doesn't fully understand what he's saying, but it's actually incredibly profound and gets to the heart of Voldemort's motivation. He wants to evade death at all costs, even at the price of his own humanity. Harry witnesses Voldemort's depravity in person at the end of his first year when he sees him drinking the blood of a unicorn in the Forbidden Forest. Firenze the Centaur explains that the blood of a unicorn staves off death, but only for someone who is willing to kill something so pure and innocent as a unicorn and live a cursed life because of it. It happens again in his second year when Voldemort possesses Ginny and attempts to regain his physical form at the expense of her life. Harry will learn more of Voldemort's evil soon, but even to this point, it is clear that not only would Voldemort destroy his own humanity to evade death, he would destroy others as well. To Voldemort, there is nothing worse than death. We can infer this from when he says to Dumbledore, "There is nothing worse than death, Dumbledore." Dumbledore responds that he is quite wrong, and that Voldemort's failure to understand that there are things much worse than death is his greatest weakness. This is perfect thematic dialogue here, and it happens within earshot of Harry, our hero, as another lesson by Dumbledore. And this line is key for Harry to defeat Voldemort in the end. Dumbledore just told Harry what Voldemort's greatest weakness was, but Harry doesn't fully understand it. Not yet. Now I think we can summarize the motivations of our hero and villain. Both would certainly agree that death is a problem. Voldemort would do everything in his power to stave off death for himself, no matter the cost to others. Harry would do everything in his power to stave off death for others, no matter the cost to himself. But which motivation wins? Obviously, we know which one is correct, but we as the audience need to see it happen, really feel it in our soul. That's why we love stories so much. It's not just the entertainment value, which is sky high in this story. It's watching the good guy struggle, learn, and win. It encourages us to be like the hero in our own life, and makes us believe that we can beat the bad guys too. So how does the story do that? Although we don't learn this until more than halfway through the series, the story actually begins with a prophecy. At the height of Voldemort's power at about the time of Harry's birth, Voldemort learns of this prophecy which tells of a baby that will have the power to defeat him. Naturally, Voldemort immediately resolves to kill this child. Voldemort's murderous motivation leads to his astonishing defeat when he fails to kill the infant Harry. Instead, his killing curse rebounds onto himself, and he vanishes for the next 10 years. It turns out that Voldemort never heard the most critical part of the prophecy, which foresaw that Voldemort would mark the child as his equal, and that the child would have power that the Dark Lord knew not. What power does Harry Potter have? Well, technically none until Voldemort decides to go and kill him. This is when Harry's mother, Lily, sacrifices her life in an attempt to save Harry's. This makes Harry impervious to harm by the Dark Lord. Dumbledore tells Harry that it was love that protected him from Voldemort's killing curse in Godric's Hollow, and from Professor Quirrell and the Sorcerer's Stone. Harry's secret power was his mother's love. She died for him. Compare this to Tom Riddle, whose mother died from despair shortly after he was born and gave him up to live in an orphanage. And we can see that Voldemort quite literally knew not of this power of a mother's love. Now, we have to skip ahead a few years for the plot to get Voldemort back on even footing with Harry. Voldemort is just a disembodied spirit for the first 3.99 books with no way to harm Harry. But that all changed in the graveyard. The next plot device that Rowling came up with to further entwine our hero and villain is the potion that Voldemort uses to resurrect his body in the graveyard. This potion has 3 ingredients, and the ingredients have a lot to say about the story's theme if you stop and pay attention. You see, Voldemort realized that Harry's power came from Lily's sacrifice and flowed in Harry's blood. Voldemort knew that he couldn't overcome that power, and he certainly couldn't be given that power in the way Harry was, so he figured out a way to steal it. What power Lily gave to her son through her sacrifice, Voldemort essentially brewed for himself in a cauldron. The first ingredient Voldemort used was present in the graveyard. This was his father's graveyard, Tom Riddle Sr., whose name Voldemort abandoned. The recipe started with bone of the father, unknowingly given. So there's the parental figure element, the love in the family, albeit dead and dry. Then he adds to the bone flesh, the flesh of the servant willingly given. And that's the sacrificial element, sacrifice not from love or selflessness, but through coercion and exploitation. but sacrificed nonetheless. Then the third ingredient, the most important part, blood of the enemy, forcibly taken. Dry bone and severed flesh has no protecting power in them, but Harry's blood does. He essentially hijacked the protection in Harry's blood and Frankensteined it into his new body. Completely unnatural. Totally evil, but it worked. Voldemort was reborn, and Harry was not immune from him anymore. But in doing this, Voldemort actually made Harry even more powerful than before, and we'll revisit that soon. But from the moment of Voldemort's resurrection on, the story completely changes. Now Voldemort is a physical threat, so the goal for Harry is no longer to keep him from returning, but to destroy him again. This time, for good. In The Half-Blood Prince, Harry finds out how to do that when Dumbledore tells him about Horcruxes, dark magical objects in which a witch or wizard has put a piece of their own soul, so that if their physical body is killed, their soul fragment remains and can attach itself to some other living thing. This is indeed the state in which Voldemort was surviving before he resurrected himself. Oh, and in order to split your soul, in this way, part of the ritual is that you must murder someone. Again, notice the contrast. For Harry, his protection came from someone laying down their life for him. For Voldemort, his protection came from taking someone's life from them. Voldemort, according to Dumbledore, has gone further than anybody along the path that leads to immortality by splitting his soul into 7 pieces. And so, at the same time, Voldemort has damaged his own soul more than anyone ever has. Harry is charged by Dumbledore to complete the task of destroying the rest of Voldemort's Horcruxes so that Voldemort can be defeated properly this time. This seems like an impossible task, but the true final task, the way to ultimately defeat Voldemort, is far more difficult than Harry even realizes. He still hasn't learned the answer of what to do about the problem of death, and until he does, Voldemort will be immortal. Why? Well, the plot still has one more yarn to twist that will drive the story to its climax and resolution. That brings us to the final installment of the series and the Deathly Hallows. This is where all these threads interweave and we start to see the whole tapestry. The legend of the Hallows describes 3 powerful objects, an unbeatable wand, a stone that can resurrect the dead, and the cloak of perfect invisibility. The legend states that if one possesses all 3 Hallows, they are the Master of Death. The Master of Death? What does that mean? It sounds like the answer to our overarching question. But how do you master death? Ask Voldemort and it means never dying. Ask Harry and it means defeating Voldemort to save his friends. At least, that was his first thought when he learned about the Hallows. He associated Master of Death with Conqueror and Vanquisher of Death. And he let his mind become preoccupied with locating the 3 Hallows, rather than the remaining 3 Horcruxes that he was hunting at the time. If he could possess the Hallows, he might not even need to destroy the Horcruxes. In the back of his mind, a stone that can resurrect the dead? Maybe Dumbledore was wrong all those years ago. Maybe there was a way to reverse death and bring back the dead. What Harry will find out, though, is that both of these objects, the Horcruxes and the Hallows, are deeply intertwined, and that both objectives will be achieved in the exact same way. And that's because there is one last secret that Dumbledore must reveal to Harry. This secret is delivered to Harry through a series of memories encapsulated in a tear. Harry learns what the prophecy means when it says that neither can live while the other survives. Harry learns that he himself is a Horcrux, one that Voldemort never intended to make. And if Voldemort cannot be defeated unless all his Horcruxes are destroyed, he can only die if Harry dies first. It's this one simple fact that makes the entire theme of this story work, and gives the story its moral. The next chapter in the book, called The Forest Again, contains, in my opinion, some of the most beautiful and profound writing of the series. It starts immediately after Harry finds out these revelations. Here is a couple excerpts that get to Harry's heart in this moment. Harry understood that he was not supposed to survive. His job was to walk calmly into death's welcoming arms. And it did not occur to him now to try and escape, to outrun Voldemort. It was over. He knew it. And all that was left was the thing itself, dying. In this moment, we finally see Harry's true motivation. We see what makes him the hero of the story. Harry was always motivated to save others, and he wouldn't hesitate to risk his own life to do it. But Harry always did everything he could to stay alive himself, because of course he never wanted to die. Death was always something to be escaped, put off, reversed if only that were possible. Now, death isn't a risk to Harry to save his friends, it's a necessity. Death is, in fact, the point. So, what do we do about death? Not conquer it, not vanquish it, but accept it. Submit to it. As the third brother, when it is time, we greet death as an old friend. Harry shows us through his actions that self-sacrifice is the ultimate expression of love. And if that requires laying down your own life to take death upon yourself to spare others from it, there is no greater sacrifice. And that is the answer to our question in a word. Sacrifice. To walk calmly into death's welcoming arms. But it's not over yet. It's during this long, slow walk into the forest to meet Voldemort that Harry becomes the Master of Death. He is defeating the final Horcrux himself, and he obtains the final Hallow, the Resurrection Stone. He had it in his pocket all year long, inside a golden snitch that he couldn't open. It said on the snitch, "I open at the close." Now Harry realized what that meant. He whispered to the snitch, "I'm about to die," and it opened, revealing the stone within. The object that could fulfill his deepest desire all his life, but now he realizes there is no value for him in bringing back the dead as he prepares to meet them in death. He brings back his dead loved ones only to hear their encouragement in pursuing his self-sacrifice. So for the Hallows, it's not that obtaining all three made you the Master of Death. Rather, only once you had already mastered death would you be worthy to obtain all three, and to use the Hallows in the proper way. And it was as the Master of Death that Harry walked into the forest to die. And this is the true climax of the story. Usually the climax is the final battle where the hero and villain go toe-to-toe that ends with one of them left standing. But in this story, that final battle is really just there for show, and it doesn't so much matter, because Voldemort is defeated when he kills Harry, not when Harry kills him. Harry becomes the Master of Death by dying, not by coming back to life. After Voldemort kills Harry, we get another banger of a chapter from Rowling of Harry talking with Dumbledore in a type of limbo state between life and death. Harry's soul is shown to be symbolically intact and pure because of his decision to sacrifice himself, and he is freed from the broken, ugly piece of Voldemort's soul that is now dead for good. And Harry realizes that he has a choice. He can either go on into the afterlife with Dumbledore as a whole and unblemished soul, or he can go back. How? Dumbledore explains to Harry that when Voldemort resurrected his body in the graveyard using Harry's blood, his blood that contained the protective power of his mother's sacrifice, Harry was tethered to life through Voldemort's new body. This is what is so brilliant about how the plot pits Harry's motivation against Voldemort's. Harry, by his blood, has been tethered to life through Voldemort, and Voldemort, with a piece of his soul, had been tethered to life through Harry. Because of this, neither can truly defeat the other without dying first, and whichever one died first, with the other still alive, would have the chance of coming back to life. So Voldemort could never have truly won, because he would have never let himself die. So Harry's tether to life would always exist in him. But Harry was able to come back, not because this was his goal. He only learned this after he had already died, but he was rewarded as the Master of Death, the one who correctly answered the question of what to do about the problem of death, with the ability to come back. And he did. He didn't need to, mind you. If he had chosen to go on with Dumbledore, he still would have been the Master of Death, and Voldemort would have still been defeated, because everyone in the battle for Hogwarts was covered by the same protection that Lily's sacrifice gave to Harry. But the mere fact that Harry had the choice to return or not proved his mastery, and he chose to come back, to rejoin the battle and destroy Voldemort's body, now that his soul had already been destroyed. And that is what Harry Potter is all about. The story tells us that self-sacrifice for the ones that you love is the proper way to live, and the proper response to the problem of death. Not fear, not escape, not destruction, but sacrifice, motivated by love. That's the motivation that Harry embodied, and that's precisely how he defeated Voldemort. So the lesson for us, only in very extreme circumstances would we be required to actually have to give our life for someone else, but apart from that extreme scenario, we can still do our best to live as Harry lived. Hermione saw it in him right away. Friendship and bravery is how she described him. Both attributes are self-sacrificial. Harry was always kind to the lowly and to the outcasts. He's generous with his time and his treasure. He exuded moral fiber. Harry sacrificing his life at the end of the story is motivated by the same thing that causes him to split his sweets with a poor stranger on the train at the beginning. It doesn't matter how big or small the sacrifice, Harry gives us a wonderful example to live by. I hope you liked this video and got something worthwhile from it. In my next video, like I said, Harry didn't need to come back to life. So what if he had decided to stay dead? I'll tease out a whole new ending based on that hypothetical, and I'll try to convince you that it might have even been better that way. Well, that's it. I'm just trying to get this channel off the ground, so please like and comment and subscribe so that you don't miss that next video when it arrives. Bye now.